was gonna say, yeah, this is something new I'm doing. I just thought, we just talk, or I'll have some questions I'll ask. I can do that at the beginning. It's okay.
Okay. Wow, those wings are good.
You like them?
Yeah.
That's good, dude. I'll try mine. I fried one of them, like I was telling you, and the other one.
Yeah, I've had the other one. It's actually pretty good. That was a good choice.
So what's new?
No, not much, man. Just been watching all the trial and impeachment trial, so been watching that and find that's interesting.
Yeah. So I was just talking to Dad. He was talking about, so they let Trump off.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
Well, I kind of figured that was going to happen. I figured that the Republicans weren't going to convict him. There was 7 that did come out and said that he was guilty, which is, I kind of figured maybe between 4 and 10. So 7 is kind of in the middle, but
It's close to, because they needed how many?
they needed 17.
Oh, okay.
So they needed 17 of them to
10
come
away.
over. So in that respect, it wasn't close, but at the end of the day, I think they did that impeachment trial, and the hearing was for the people, because they kind of knew that that the Republicans weren't really going to convict him. I mean, so I think it was more for the people, and they kind of knew that. So the people have a better understanding of what happened, and even me watching it, I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before.
Yeah, what'd you learn? Because I didn't watch it. I just saw like bits of it. Like I saw that video.
Just like
that horrific video.
Yeah, their video. I just learned more about the people, like the police officers that were involved in it. Some of the things they had to go through. I didn't know some of the protesters were using bear spray on those on the officers, and those officers talked about how horrific that was. Not only does it make their eyes itchy, it kind of took their breath away, and they couldn't hardly breathe. And so you learned about that, and you just learned about some of the things like with Mike Pence, like what he had to go through, and trying to get away at the last minute before those rioters got in there. So there's a lot of things like that, a lot of little details that was kind of interesting that you didn't know what happened before.
I know we're eating, but I heard they had feces on walls and stuff.
Yeah, they did some horrific things. And, that's another thing they talked about, too, is just like the people who worked in the Capitol themselves, because they didn't really talk about that as much. But some of the, guys, the Democrats, were bringing that up. They were talking about, like, some of the janitorial people, about how they had to hide, and they talked about how some of the cooks and all those other people were trying to hide, and some of the people that worked for the senators and representatives, and how they had to hide and take off. And
were they like on their own, or
they were
with everybody? I wonder.
Some of them were kind of on their own, but they kind of huddled together. They would go into some of the offices, and they kind of hid in some of the offices. And I'm surprised that they didn't get in there. The rioters didn't get in there. Some of the doors, were double doors. So they might have broken through the first door, but then there might have been another door there too.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get in there completely, but they were kind of barricaded the doors and to get away from them. So it was really lucky that more people didn't get hurt or killed, basically. So so it was definitely, it's an eye-opening experience, but it's just interesting because those senators and the representatives were, they weren't just jurors or witnesses, because that happened to them. They were there. So that just, it's just kind of interesting how that played out.
I was thinking it might go against Trump since they were there.
Yeah.
It's not like people were outside and they're trying to judge on somebody else. It's like they were there, they felt it, they were afraid for their lives. So I was thinking that they would convict them on that, but I keep hearing everybody saying, including Dad, that it wasn't going to happen. So
yeah, And that's another thing, you know, they experienced it, they witnessed it. And, you know, the day after and the day of, you know, they were talking about that just, you know, that Trump caused this, you know, and most of them are kind of on board with it. And then a couple of days later, some of them start changing their tune and started saying, you know, maybe it wasn't as bad as it was. And, you know, they started backpedaling a bit.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that's because they're afraid of some of their electric, some of the people who vote for them. Maybe they're afraid of them.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe they're afraid of being on the island, being, you know, people primarying them in the next 2 years or whatever. You know, so it's just I don't know. There was an opportunity to show some courage.
Yeah, I have to say, when I heard about today, I was a little disappointed. You know, I mean, just not that they just let him off. It's almost like, and I haven't heard the whole story. I know you've heard more than I have, but it's almost like they're lying to us, they're lying to themselves, trying to tell us that something didn't happen that we all know did happen. We all saw it. We saw the pictures, and it's almost like they think they can stuff it down our throats, and here they did it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why I was disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I kind of knew too that I had an idea that they probably weren't going to convict him, but at some point you start to see it wasn't just for those senators in that room; it's for the people to see. It's like I said, you learn more things about what happened.
Good point.
And in the short run, yeah, Trump gets away with it, but in the long run, I think, you know, that people are going to look at this and say, you know, you can't let him get away with this stuff. You know, you're seeing businesses starting to isolate themselves from him. You're starting to see people bringing up cases against them, whether that's in Georgia or New York.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be in litigation for a very long time. And there's 74 million people that voted for him. I think that's as high as that's going to get. I think it's only going to go down because people don't want to be associated. I think there's a lot of people, and it's not going to happen where hundreds of thousands of people leave the Republican Party or they're disappointed. It's going to be a couple hundred here, be 50 there, it'll be, you know, after this trial and seeing he's acquitted, how many people is that going to annoy? And I think it's a long process. I think over the years, people are going, you know, they're going to have problems because people aren't going to support that. You know, and that's kind of how I see it. It's just like a slow drip underneath your sink. You know, you put a bucket under there. You know, if it's just there for a couple hours, you're going to look at it and say, oh, it's not that much. But if it's left there for a couple of weeks, that bucket could be overflowing. And for me, that's just a metaphor for what could happen to the Republicans and Trump. That, you know, over time, people are going to peel away and say, I don't want to be associated with this party because they let him off. And history is going to look at it and they're going to judge some of these people who didn't have the courage to speak out and say, hey, this is wrong, you know, for what happened here. So that's just my opinion on it.
And I hear they're doing that now, like it's not, like I call people the silent majority. So you never know what they're thinking or what they're going to do. Like I gave an example once that, you know, somebody goes to the store, you offend them, they don't tell anybody, they just don't come back. So I figure that that's probably going to happen, like the silent majority. But what I've heard today was that there's people actually going out and changing their registration from Republican to something else. You know, so that's pretty huge, I think. That you're so upset that you'll actually change it. Because you can still be a Republican and vote Democrat. They're changing who they are. And I think that's kind of like what you're talking about. I think that's pretty interesting.
They don't want to be associated.
Thousands too.
Thousands of them.
Thousands are doing that. Thousands. Like the drip you're saying? Not millions, but thousands.
Thousands.
So that if that's any indication how the silent majority feels,
Yeah.
In my opinion, the Republican Party is in trouble.
Yeah, I think they are. This is what do you stand for? You know, you have to stand for something. You have to
That's what
draw the line in the sand and say, when's this enough? I mean, if you're not going to do something or you're attacked in your workplace, or what people say, you know, the Capitol is the people's house. You know, something where it hasn't been attacked since the War of 1812. And if that happens now, I mean, what do these Republicans stand for? If they won't do a thing when they see people dying, getting injured, and try to basically interrupt their job because they're trying to certify the election. And basically these people are trying to interfere with that because they didn't like the results. So, you know, this is definitely a come to Jesus moment for some of those, those Republicans and some of the people. I mean, what do you stand for?
Yeah, like, who are you fighting for? Because we're the public. And, you know, so who are you fighting for? I don't understand. Except for yourselves. And you're trying to get reelected and, you know, all this stuff. So, so what'd you think of when you saw the Capitol on the 6th? I don't know where you're at or what you were doing. What was your thoughts, like the moment you were seeing it, or when you first heard about it? What'd you think?
Well, I was at work at the time. That day was actually kind of busy, so I didn't get a real chance to really just look down and see what was going on. I think it was about 4 o'clock our time, Denver time, and it's probably, I don't know how far DC is. I don't know if that's like an hour or 2 hours, but you know, I was like shocked. I was like, this can't be happening. I said, no way. How's that possible? Because that morning, you know, you hear the mayor and some of the other people talking about using the National Guard and telling people to stay home just in case, you know, there's going to be problems or something. So I figured, okay, well, if anything, the Capitol is going to be locked up like the airport. You're going to have all the security. You're going to have all the people. And, you know, I was just kind of shocked. I was like, how the heck did they get in there? And if they got in there, where's the reinforcements? You know, so that was the thing that was going through my mind. And I started seeing more reports. You know, the time when I wasn't busy at work, I actually got to see some of the reports. And I was like shocked. I was like, where do all these people come from? I know that Trump had a rally, but I was like, how the heck did they just swarm all over the Capitol like a bunch of bees?
Roaches, dude.
Yeah,
roaches.
roaches.
What do you call those dead people there? Zombies.
Yeah.
It looks like a bunch of zombies.
Yeah.
Those buildings and stuff.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. You know, they just kind of like a bunch of zombies and just infested the whole thing. And that's what I was, you know, talking about with the trial.
Infested.
Yeah.
Infested.
Exactly.
That's the word.
Yeah. And that's what we were talking about, what I learned new. You know, like during the trial, they talked about, you know, because on the outside, you just see the people, you know, hitting the police officers, and they got in. You saw some people saying some incoherent things or whatever. But when you actually see the details, you're like, wow, all that really happened?
It was like a real danger. It was
real danger.
Yeah.
And how some of those politicians got out just in the nick of time, and you know, how some of them thought they were good for dead. And, you know, it was terrible. And the more you learn about it, you're just like, how the heck does this happen in this country? You know, where the Capitol gets sacked. You know, the Capitol got sacked. And it got sacked, like you and me have talked about it, over a lie.
Over a lie, yeah.
Over a lie.
Voter fraud, stealing the election, getting our country back. It's like, what are you talking about? Getting our country back. This is all of our country. What do you mean get your country? Nobody took your country away. Yeah.
Get back from who?
Exactly.
What, from us?
It's almost like, I was going to ask you about this too, but it's almost like people have been talking about this civil war or whatever they want to happen for years. It's like they want it to happen. So then they almost like created this reason. But I was going to ask you, like, what's your thoughts on why people, I know we're talking about voter fraud stuff, but why these people even bought into it, why they buy into these conspiracy theories, why they dare? I mean, what's your thoughts? I know Trump has to do with it, but I want to know what you think.
I always, when it comes to this stuff, I always kind of rely on my spiritual experience. Things that I don't know if we end up talking about that.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about that too.
But I always kind of rely on that with these kind of questions for myself or whatever. And to me, it always comes back down to fear. These people are full of fear. They're scared. Because when these people are acting tough and showing up to these Capitol events with their guns and they're threatening people. There's always a fear behind that stuff.
Showing up their guns.
Yeah, they show up with their guns, threatening people.
Large numbers,
Yeah, it's like, and they sack the Capitol, and what are you afraid of? There's always a fear. So they can act tough all they want, and they can have all their vests on and their guns, but they're scared. They're scared to death. And what are they scared of? That's something that's up for debate. They're probably scared of, the population is changing. The demographics are changing. They're scared of being left behind,
which is already obvious.
That's exactly. So they're scared of these type of things, and when you're scared, you're going to do things that you normally wouldn't do. You're going to believe things that you normally wouldn't normally believe, and that's another thing. Beliefs. We all have beliefs, but in my view, the fewer beliefs, the better. I always look at things as a skeptic. I try to look at things as a skeptic for the most part. You question everything, assume nothing.
Right.
You're on that tightrope of not believing anything, but you leave the room for possibility something is true. And these people just kind of believed everything that Trump would say, and you have those QAnon people, which I've heard. Which we'll probably end up talking about later.
Yeah.
Like I know some of these QAnon people because I have. You
know some, you say?
No, just like how they are, how they think. Because I've heard them talk. Some of them they're kind of lost. They're latching on to things because maybe they lost their jobs or they want to believe. So, because they're a mixture of people. Some of them are just like right-wing extremists, and some of them are, spiritual, new age type of people. And I guess with these QAnon people, they think that Trump is kind of like is going to usher in a new age. That he's the leader of humanity. Because if you some of this stuff, they have these Q posts of people for an individual that's supposed to work with Trump who puts out these posts about, they're kind of vague quotes about how Trump is going to usher in a new age and they're after the deep state and all this stuff. And a lot of those QAnon people kind of got caught up in that, and they had told themselves that Trump is, he's not going to be leaving on, January 20th, the inauguration day, that he was going to arrest all of his opponents and Biden wasn't going to be the president and all this, the pedophiles are going to be dealt with and all these other things. And that didn't happen. And, that caused a lot of problems for them. They're
scrambling right now.
They're kind of scrambling, but the thing with them, because they have a lot of conspiracy theories, they always kind of push it back to
they got a new one.
Have a new one.
March 4th, what's that about?
I don't know all the details. I just know that they think that Trump, I don't know, I guess they think that Trump and Biden are working together, I guess. I don't know all the conspiracies, but I guess they're trying to say that maybe Trump will come back or something. And,
and why do you, because I heard that too.
Yeah.
I think you told me yesterday. Why do you think they think them two are working together? Like, are they just clinging the...
Well, because when you're a conspiracy theorist like that, you'll make up whatever you got to do because you've invested your whole life into this stuff or invested a lot of your years into this conspiracy. And if it doesn't pan out, you're just kind of looking for the next thing. It's like somebody who's drowning in the ocean or something. You're going to be flailing around and try to find whatever you can to grab onto to save yourself.
Yeah.
And if that's another conspiracy that you push down the line, then that's what they're going to do, and they'll believe that. So when that one doesn't come true and come to fruition, then they're going to come up with another one.
And it's kind of like stringing people along.
Yeah.
I think I called it. I don't know what I called it. I can't remember what I called it. It's like you're chasing something.
Yeah.
And people keep putting it out there, and you never just catch it. I can't remember what I called that though.
Right. Almost like dangling a carrot.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's actually what I called it. Yeah, I call it.
Yeah.
It's like they're dangling this carrot, and you just keep chasing it, hoping that you're almost there. You almost get it.
Yeah.
you know, like the 20th, or whatever day it was, the 20th.
Right.
And it didn't work out, so now we're moving to another day. That's coming. We're so close. And then, of course, nothing's going to happen that day either. Yeah.
So they talk about the Great Awakening because that's January 20th was the day that Biden was inaugurated. That was supposed to be the Great Awakening for these QAnon people. And they were right. It was a Great Awakening. They found out that it was all a lie and a fraud.
It was.
And, you know, and a lot of people were not happy about it. And some people disavowed it and said, you know, this is nonsense. I wasted my life doing this stuff.
Yeah.
It's time to go forward and do something else. And some people decide to latch onto it more and just say, you know, this is something else is going to happen. There's another meaning to it. So it just depends on the person. But it was an opportunity for people to get on with their lives and stop listening to this conspiracy and, you know, and be reunited with their families again. Because I've read a lot of stuff about these people, and their families are just like devastated because, you know, they disavow their family members, and families don't feel like they can talk to them anymore. And
because they're part of QAnon.
Yeah, because they're part of QAnon. Because you know they pretty much sacrificed their whole life for this thing.
Yeah.
And bought into it, and it's just isolated them from their families. So with that, the Great Awakening, which was that January 20th, was an opportunity for some people to say, you know, this is nonsense. I'm not wasting my life.
Some people did.
And some people did.